Sponsored by Rabbi Shlomi and Mirla Greenwald. This is a Sicha from Likutei Sichos, Chelek Beis, Parshas Emor, Sicha Beis. And the topic of the Sicha is that in this week's Parsha we learn the pasuk of Daber Bnei Yisrael Lemer, B'Chodesh Hashvi Be'echad LaChodesh. So it's talking about Rosh Hashanah, Yeh Lachem Shabbosin, Zichrin Trua Mikra Kodesh. And we learned the explanation of Rashi on this pasuk. And there are three parts in the Sicha. The Rebbe will, number one, ask 5 questions on Rashi. Number 2, present the key of what is really bothering Rashi. And number 3, based on this, answer all 5 questions. From the pasuk in our parsha that talks about Rosh Hashanah and says, Daber Bnei Yisrael, speak to the Bnei Yisrael, Lemer, tell them, B'Chodesh Hashvi Be'echad LaChodesh, on the 7th month, on the first of the month, which is Rosh Hashanah, Yeh Lachem Shabbosin, it should be for you Shabbosin, Zichrin Trua, it should be for you Zichrin Trua. So from that pasuk, Rashi quotes the words Zichrin Trua, and Rashi explains Zichrin, and he continues, Psukei Zichrenes, these are psukim of Zichrenes, Upsukei Shofars, and psukim of Shofars, Lisker lechem akedas Yitzchak, to remember for you akedas Yitzchak, shekarav tachtav ayil, that an ayil, a ram, was offered in his place. And there are 5 questions here. The first question is that the whole Rashi doesn't seem to be necessary, because the words Zichra and Trua are common words, and they don't need any explanation. So why is there any explanation of Rashi here at all? We're not getting into what Rashi explains, but the necessity, the need for any explanation at all. When we look at the words Zichra and Trua, they're both common words. Zichra means to remember, Trua is the blowing of a shofar. And so why is there any need for an explanation from Rashi? Now, some of Farshim explain that the question Rashi has and that he's answering here is that later in Parshas Pinchas, it says about Rosh Hashanah that it's a Yom Trua. And so the difficulty is that over here it says that it's a Zichrin Trua. And that's what Rashi is coming to address and explain. And that's why these words require an explanation. However, it's difficult to explain it this way because, and there are 2 questions here. In addition to the difficulty that if this was indeed Rashi's question, then Rashi should have explained the question, because we're not yet familiar with the pasuk in Parshas Pinchas. We didn't learn it yet. And so if this was Rashi's question, then Rashi would have said, Zichrin Trua, it says Zichrin Trua, over Parshas Pinchas Namar, Yom Trua. And in Parshas Pinchas it says Yom Trua. But in addition to that question, there's another difficulty here, and that is that if there is a question from a later pasuk, then Rashi asks it there. Like we explained many times, the way of Rashi is to answer questions that come up while learning this pasuk, either because what it says in the pasuk is not clear, not understood, or because there's a question on this pasuk from an earlier pasuk that we already learned. However, if the difficulty is from a later pasuk, then Rashi only will address and answer the question when we get to the later pasuk. And so if this was Rashi's question, then number 1, Rashi would have to write it out. And number 2, he wouldn't answer it here, he would answer it later in Parshas Pinchas. The second question is, after we have this first question about why is there any need for any explanation at all, on the other hand, now that Rashi does give us an explanation and we look at it, the question is, how does Rashi know in Pshutei Shel Mikra that Zichrin Trua is through saying Psukei Zichrenes v'Shofars? Zichrin Trua sounds like it's just a date to remember the blowing of the shofar, not through saying Psukei Zichrenes and Shofars. The third question is, when we learn Rashi very simply, it sounds like what Rashi is saying is that from the words Zichrin Trua, we learn 2 things. From Zichrin we learn that there is a tzivuy, a command to say Psukei Zichrenes, and from Trua we learn that there is a tzivuy, a command to say Psukei Shofars. However, the words Zichrin Trua sounds like it's one thing, not like 2 things, because Zichrin is connected to the word Trua. It's a Zichrin, a remembrance of Truma. And so the question is, why does Rashi explain that it's 2 things? The fourth question is, why does Rashi write the word Zichrin again? Because Rashi quotes the words Zichrin Trua from the pasuk, and then he writes Zichrin Psukei Zichrenes Upsukei Shofars. How come he writes the word Zichrin again? And if for whatever reason he does write the word zichron again, then why doesn't he also write the word trua again? He should write zichron psuke zichronis, trua psuke shofros. So the question basically is, why does Rashi write zichron again? And if for whatever reason he does, then he should also write the word trua again. And the fifth question is, at the end of Rashi, Rashi explains the reason for saying these psukim, that it's lisker lechem akedes yitzchak shekarev tachtav ayil. And the question is that it's not the way of Rashi to give the reason for mitzvahs. And the reason is for that is simple, because when it comes to learning in Derech HaPshat, there's no need for there to be a reason for a mitzvah. Now we're going to move on to present the key of the Sicha. And the key of the Sicha is to understand what it is that's bothering Rashi. And once we understand what's bothering Rashi, then we'll understand why Rashi has to give an explanation and why he gives the explanation that he gives. So the explanation, all of this is as follows. The main intent of Rashi isn't to explain the words Zichrin Trua, because like we said, the translation of these words is known. But rather, Rashi is coming to explain what it means when it says Yilachem Zichrin Trua, that these words require an explanation. The reason they require an explanation is because the meaning of the words Yilachem Zichrin Trua is that this is a tzivui to Yidden, that they should have a Zichrin Trua, that they should remember Trua. The pasuk is not saying this is a day of Zichrin Trua, something which is just there on its own, but rather it's a command to Yidden. There's a tzivui over here, Yilachem Zichrin Trua, that the Yidden should remember Trua. And so the difficulty over here that Rashi is coming to explain is that the tzivui isn't explained. It just says it should be for you. You should make it a zichron trua. And the difficulty is, how do we make it a zichron trua? It's not said in the pasuk. And that's what Rashi is coming to explain to us over here. And because of this difficulty of what does it mean? What is the tzivui? That it should be Yilachem zichron trua. What is this tzivui? That Yidden should make it a day of zichron trua. So therefore Rashi explains that tzivui is psukei shofros. And what he means to say is that it's not a tzivui to just remember, zichron trua, just a zichron, the remembering, but rather it's a tzivui to say psukei shofros. And this explanation, that when it says zichron trua, it's a tzivui to say psukei shofros, to do something, is hinted to in the meaning of the words zichron trua themselves. As Rashi himself explained on the pasuk in the Aseres HaDibros of Zachar es Yom HaShabbos, where also over there it says Zachar, to remember, that Rashi tells us that it means Tenu Leiv Lisker Tamid es Yom HaShabbos, put your heart to always remember the day of Shabbos. That if a nice item comes your way, Shabbos, set it aside for Shabbos, meaning that it's not a tzivui to just remember when it says Zachar Yom Shabbos, but rather it's a remembering that is expressed with a certain action. And similarly here, when it says Yilachem Zichrin Trua, when there's a tzivui to remember, it means a remembering that brings to an action. And in our case, the action is the action of saying psukei shofros. And so this answers part of our second question: how does Rashi know to explain that zichron trua means to say psukei zichronis and psukei shofros? Now we understand how Rashi knows to explain that it means psukei shofros, because there's a tzivui over here, and the tzivui is not explained. And we see from the word zachar es Yom HaShabbos in the pasuk by the Aseres HaDibros, from Rashi's explanation there, we see that the word zachar means a remembering that's connected to an action. If there's a tzivui for remembering, it's a remembering that's connected to an action. And so too over here, it has to be connected to an action. And the action that there is that's related to trua, to shofar, is the saying of psukei shofros. However, we still need to understand why the Torah writes the tzivui of saying psukei shofros with the word zichron. Even though the word zichron can mean to remember by doing an action, over here it doesn't really seem to fit to use the word zichron. The problem with the word zichron is that the word zichron makes sense when a person can forget the matter, and therefore it requires a warning to remember. And it's because of this that there is a tzivui of Zachar es Yom HaShabbos, since it means to always remember Shabbos even during the week, during the rest of the week as well, when a person may forget about it. And similarly, in the request of Yosef to the Sar Mashkin to remember him, it makes sense that he told him to remember him, that he told him Ki'im Zachartani, because until the Sar Mashkin was freed, there was a period of time that passed, and in addition, the change of being a prisoner to being reinstated in his position was a big change that could cause him to forget. So there it makes sense to use the word Zachar, to remember. However, here there's no need whatsoever for something special to help a person remember, since it's only for one day. It's only one day that it's a Zichron and true. It's the day of Rosh Hashanah. And so it should rather say Amiras Shofars. Actually say that the command is Yilchem Amiras Shofars. And in order to answer this question, so Rashi explains that the tzivui of Zichron and Trua comes to also add Psuki Zichronis, meaning the word Zichron can mean to remember through saying, and it literally means, the simple meaning is, or the straightforward meaning is, to remember through saying Psuke Shofars. However, because of the difficulty that the word Zichron doesn't seem to fit perfectly, so Rashi says that the word Zichron is being used to teach us about another thing, which is the saying of Psuke Zichronis, that in addition to teaching that there should be a Zichron of Trua through saying Psuke Shofars, it's also teaching us something for itself, which is the saying of Psuke Zichronis. However, it still requires further explanation, because Zichron has to be connected to something that's being remembered. And the question is, what are Psuke Zichronis reminding us about? And therefore Rashi explains, Liskir lechem akedas Yitzchak shekarov tachtav ayil. Rashi is telling us over here not the reason for the mitzvah. He's telling us what's being remembered through the Psuke Zichronis. And so that answers our last question. That Rashi is not telling us the reason for the mitzvah, but rather he's telling us the explanation of what's being remembered. And it comes out according to this, that it's not about the Yidden remembering something, but rather Psuke Shofars accomplishes that it's about Hashem remembering something. It's about Hashem remembering the Akedas Yitzchak. Now we're going to move on to the final part of the Sicha. Rashi writes at the end, Liskar lochem akedas Yitzchak shekarov tachtav ayil, after saying Psuke Shofars. So Rashi says Zichron, Psuke Zichronis, Psuke Shofars, Liskar lochem akedas Yitzchak shekarov tachtav ayil. And the question is, Rashi should have said Zichron, Psuke Zichronis, Liskar lochem akedas Yitzchak shekarov tachtav ayil, and only afterwards say Psuke Shofars. Why does he write Liskar lochem akedas Yitzchak shekarov tachtav ayil after writing also Psuke Shofars, even though it relates only to Psuke Zichronis? And the reason is because also the saying of Psuke Shofars is to awaken Hashem to the Sichos of Yidden. And therefore Rashi says, we say Psuke Zichronis, Psuke Shofars, both of them, Liskar lechem akedas Yitzchak shekarov tachtav ayil. And that's why Rashi writes Liskar lechem after saying both Psuke Zichronis and Psuke Shofars. And that's also why Rashi mentions in the Liskar Lechem, he mentions Ayil. Rashi could have just said Liskar Lechem Akedas Yitzchak. Why does he add Shekarov Tachtav Ayil? He does this in order to emphasize the connection of the Psuke Shofars to Akedas Yitzchak. Because in the Akedas Yitzchak, an Ayil was used. It says the word Ayil, that from the horn of an Ayil we make a shofar. So Rashi is showing us that there's a connection. Now the question, however, is, what is the basis for this? According to what we learned before, only Psuke Shofars still requires an explanation for what it is connected to remembering. And we said it's Liskar lechem akedas Yitzchak. What's the explanation for Rashi teaching over here that also Psuke Shofars is Liskar lechem akedas Yitzchak? So the explanation for this is as follows. We explained earlier in our third question that the words Zichron Trua indicate that the word Zichron is connected to the word Trua. It's a Zichron Trua. And so therefore, even though we are now learning that there is a special independent teaching that we learn from the word Zichron alone, nevertheless, since the word Zichron is connected to Trua, it's a Zichron Trua, so it's understood that this independent teaching is also connected to the next word Trua, meaning that also in the word Trua, which refers to the saying of Psuke Shofars, there is this very same Zichron. And now, based on this, we're going to answer our fourth question. According to this, it's understood why Rashi quotes the word Zichron again in his explanation. We asked, why does Rashi say Zichron Trua? He quotes from the pasuk Zichron Trua, and then he writes Zichron Psuke Zichronis. Why does Rashi write the word Zichron again? Because Rashi is teaching us that what compels him to say that Zichron is something for itself, before he says Psuke Zichronis, he has to explain to us what's the basis for this. So Rashi is teaching us that what compels him to say that Zichron is something for itself and is not just related to Trua that follows it, like it seems that it's Zichron of Trua, it's because it says Zichron and not Amiras. So that's how we learn that it means Psuki Zichronis. So Rashi tells us Zichron, that's the word that teaches us Psuki Zichronis. Whereas the explanation for Psuki Shefris is learned from the simple meaning of the words Zichron Trua themselves that Rashi quotes at the beginning. And there's no need to repeat either of those words again. And now we're just going to wrap up how to learn the whole Rashi based on what we just said. And Rashi continues. He says, Zichron, that's what teaches us Psuke Zichrenis. And then Rashi continues, Upsuke Shefris, Lisker Lechem Akedas Yitzchak Shekarv Tachtavayel. That since it says Zichron and Trua, which we said those two words are connected, so it proves that also in Trua there is the element of Zichron. This very same Zichron. And from here it's understood that both the Psuki Zichrenis and the Psuki Shefris are said for the same reason, which is Lisker Lechem Akedas Yitzchak Shekarv Tachtav Ayel. So in the word Lisker we see the connection to Zichrenis, and in the word Ayel we see the connection to Shefris. And based on all of this, we have another explanation for why Rashi writes Zichron Psuki Zichrenis Upsuke Shefris. We asked, why doesn't Rashi write in between? Why doesn't he write Zichron Psuke Zichrenis and then write Trua Upsuke Shefris? So we explained that that's unnecessary because Rashi already quotes the words Zichron Trua. Those are the words that teach us Psuke Shefris on a simple level. It's only Psuke Zichrenis that are not understood. Where do we learn that from? So Rashi says Zichron to tell us. But based on all of this, we have another explanation. Why he doesn't write Zichron Psuke Zichrenis Trua Upsuke Shefris. To emphasize that also the saying of Psuke Shefris is for Zichron, that Hashem should remember Lochem Akedas Yitzchak Shekarv Tachtavayel. He says Zichron, that the word Zichron is connected to Psuke Zichronis, Psuke Shefris. That's what he's hinting to over here. That the Zichron is connected to both Psuke Zichronis and Psuke Shefris. Both of them are connected. Lisker Lochem Akedas Yitzchak Shekarv Tachtavayel.